Trump, in fact, mentioned the North's nuclear missiles, but that was no more than a line thrown out in passing early on. The American leader instead undermined the Kim family by launching an assault on its abuse of human rights and indirectly made the case for regime change. That, at least is according to Gordon Chang, who says hitting the regime on human rights abuses is what Kim Jong-un fears the most. Joining us now is the man who wrote the article titled, "In State of the Union, Trump Goes Where Kim Jong-un Fears Most, Human Rights." There's our man, Daily Beast columnist Gordon Chang, contributor at both World Affairs Journal and Forbes.com. Gordon, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Bill.
So exactly why does the Kim family, fear the attack on the human rights issues the most?
I think because it goes to the core of the problems of the Kim family. Remember, you've got two Koreas. They sit side by side, one free, the other slave. You know, the people in the enslaved Korea maybe can accept their condition, but they have to have a reason, and they don't. And so Kim Jong-un is really concerned about information going from South Korea into North Korea. So this just hits at the legitimacy of the regime, because everything that Kim and his father and grandfather, his two predecessors, have talked about is how great North Korea is. Any talk about the human rights problem, such as we heard in the State of the Union address, really undermines that legitimacy.
I mean, I feel like the iconic moment in the State of the Union address was when he held up those crutches. I mean, what is more iconic than seeing someone who had quite a tragic story somehow come out and tell his story to the entire world?
Well, yeah, to me, that was the most important part of the State of the Union, because what it showed is the triumph of the human spirit. Here you had someone who lost a left leg and left arm, and yet they went thousands of miles on those crutches for freedom. There's no question about it. That was, for me, the high moment of the State of the Union.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Gordon. I'm sitting here watching it, and you know, I'm feeling emotional again watching it. This is the dramatic climax to a movie if you're going to write it. In the case of this young man, and it was interesting because you and I've had this conversation before, not necessarily on the air, but off air. President Moon in South Korea has been a person who is longing for, if you will, a reunification of the two Koreas. And they seem to be willing, they, meaning Moon himself and maybe the younger South Korean generation, willing to overlook some of the more ugly realities of the North. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, here we have President Trump much more concerned about the human rights of Koreans than Moon Jae-in, the South Korean president. And, you know, since we've talked, Bill, there has really been a shift in opinion in South Korea, not just among the conservatives, who you'd expect to oppose President Moon's initiatives to North Korea, but among Moon's base, the youngest voters, because they're looking at this and they're saying, look, you know, we're South Koreans, and there's a South Korean nationalism that is replacing the Korean nationalism of the older generations. Older generations see one Korean state, they've got to reconcile, and that means South Korea's got to help North Korea. Young South Koreans say, no, we're South Koreans, and you know, we should be helping ourselves. And this has really sort of been highlighted by this joint women's ice hockey team, where the President Moon wanted to have a unified Korean team, and that has not gone down very well in South Korea. 7 out of 10 South Koreans don't want that. The reason is South Korean athletes who've been training for years are being turfed off their own team in order to make way for North Koreans.
But it does make for a nice story, and isn't peace cheap and war expensive? I mean, very few people realize that Seoul is less than 30 miles from the North Korean border. Can you imagine that? That would be like here in New York City, Jersey being North Korea. Think about that. And artillery would kill thousands and thousands of people. Don't you think that's why this president is trying to establish some dialogue? Although, of course, he's skipping over some of the more, or obviously unflattering features of the regime in the North.
Well, first of all, I have to say that I'm talking to you from North Korea. I mean, New Jersey. Yeah, of course, no South Korean wants a war for the reasons you mentioned, and the casualty estimates for the first hours of a conflict on the Korean Peninsula are just horrific. But that doesn't mean you have to do what President Moon is trying to do, which is to give money to the North Koreans. As a matter of fact, I think that makes conflict much more likely because Moon can't really fulfill the promises and the hopes that he is creating in Kim Jong-un, the North Korean ruler. And the reason is there are U.S. sanctions and there are UN sanctions, and they will really restrict what Moon can do. That means at the end of the Olympics or the Paralympics in March, you're going to see that Kim Jong-un is going to make demands that Moon can't satisfy. And so Kim is going to throw tantrums. And when North Koreans throw tantrums, really very bad things occur.